One feature that is becoming increasingly common in web applications is the possibility of authenticating only once for all the applications we're using. Single sign-on is the procedure through which a user authenticates in a web application and is also automatically authenticated in the rest of the apps running in different tabs of the same browser window. This can be done because an application using GAM can be an identity provider, such as Facebook or Google+, and other applications using GAM can authenticate through it. With single sign-on, SSO, if all these applications are run in the same browser instance, in different tabs, users need to log in only once. This can be configured at installation time, with no programming required, only configuring the GAM security module. The single sign-on mechanism used in GeneXus is based on the OAuth 2.0 standard. If I'm logged in using single sign-on, it means that in the same browser I'm running several applications in different tabs, all within the same browser session. But I may need to log out, and it may happen that I want to log out from only one or several applications. In this case, 3 options are available. Client-side only, I log out from an app, and the rest of the apps stay connected to the identity provider. It means that only one app will be logged out. Identity provider and client. The session is ended in the client and also in the identity provider. The rest of the apps will stay connected as long as their local session is alive, but a new login will be required when necessary. And finally, identity provider and all clients. In this case, the server session is ended, as are all client sessions. Therefore, the applications will have to log in again to enter. Next, we will make a basic demo about how we can add authentication features to an application developed with GeneXus. We will see how simple it is to do this kind of task just by changing some properties in the active version. To do so, let's go to GeneXus. Here we are in the Preferences window, and at the active version level, we have the Enable Integrated Security property set to false. We will enable this by setting it to true. As you can see, a dialog box is opened suggesting that the entire GAM security module will be installed in my KB. Remember that they are GeneXus objects that were developed using GeneXus and which will be integrated into my KB. In addition, I will also have several external objects available, including the API that I will be able to use to access various GAM functions programmatically. So now, I click on Yes. And I leave Integrated Security level set to Authentication because I'm only interested in authenticating. Note that many external objects, domains, and other GAM resources are being imported. They are the objects from the GAM KB which are being incorporated into my KB. If we open the KB Explorer, we can see that there are new folders containing various GAM resources that were added as the wizard imported the objects. For example, in Library, we have several GAM libraries that I will be able to use, and which are basically API external objects. I can also obtain some examples and, of course, some general objects from GAM. Later, we can see how they will work. We'll wait some minutes until all the objects are imported. Okay, all the objects have been imported, so now we will run a rebuild all. We open the rebuild all option, and I'm notified that the GAM database hasn't been found, and I'm offered to create it. The GAM will create its own database, and all the information related to users, permissions, and so on will be saved in a database other than our application database. We click on Yes to have the database created. As we can see, the rebuild all operation is complete, so I run the application. Meanwhile, we can confirm that here in integrated security level, it says authentication, which was the value that we had set. That is to say, we will only see the authentication part, and we won't see anything about authorization. The developer menu is already open, and we will look for the GAM home object. Note that to run the application, I need to log in. This login was automatically programmed. That is to say, it was added by the GAM with one of the objects added to my KB. I only had to change a property and run a rebuild all and nothing else. Now I will log in. With the username admin and password admin123. Of course, we can change this or create our own users. I click Login, and now I'm running the GAM home object, which is the GAM backend. As you can see, here we have several options. For example, I will select User, and the only user created so far is the administrator user. At the top right, we can see that the password and username I entered belong to the administrator user. Here I have several details related to the administrator. Note that I can also make several operations with the administrator user. But instead of using the administrator, we will create our own user. With local authentication, the username will be training, and I can leave this empty. training@genexus.com. We will create a password, training in lowercase. We confirm, and just enter training as first name. We leave the rest unchanged, add default security, and we'll confirm. And now we have a user for training. Here in roles, we can create different roles. So far, I have only one administrator role created. But we could add other roles depending on what I have in my company. For example, a DBA or a manager role, or different roles to which I will give permissions to access only some parts of the application. For now, we're only testing authentication, so we're checking that it requests a username and a password in order to confirm that the person logging in is the right person. Here in Settings, I also have other options. For example, only local authentication is created here. I could add another type of authentication. Remember that we've said it could be custom authentication or through Facebook, Google, or Twitter. That is to say, there are several ways of authentication, and here I have to set the authentication type I want to use for my application. Good. We'll return to GeneXus, and I'll show you that this login object that was displayed is here. It is the GAM example login that was automatically created by the GAM and was associated by default, but I could create my own login screen and use it in my application. I also have a screen to use if a login is not authorized, which can also be used for smart devices. For smart devices, I can also define a login object. Right now, the GAM SD login is being used. Now I'll run the smart device object. In this case, The main object is the event day object, which is the menu. And we will see that security will also be added to the smart device application, which means that it will not be possible to access the menu directly, because I will be prompted to log in first. Here I have the emulator, and the login screen for smart devices is open. I enter, as I did earlier today, admin, admin123, and now I can access the application menu. And of course, now I can see the speakers, and so on. Let's return to the web screen. We were here in roles. I was logged in as administrator, so now I log out. And I'll log back in with the user I had created before, the training user, with the password training. It says this user is not authorized. This is one of the automatic screens I told you about. What we will do is associate the user with a role, for example, the administrator role. First, I log in as administrator again. Next, I assign the administrator role to the training user. We edit the user's details, change its roles, and add the administrator role. Now I will set this role to be the main role. Okay, I'll try to log out again and log back in with the training user. And as we can see, I was able to log back in with the training user to the GAM backend. I open the emulator, and I'm prompted to log in, so I will use the same username, and note that the training user has access to the data on screen. This was a small demo to show you how easy it is to add security features to an application. Just by changing a property and running a rebuild all, we obtained a backend that allows us to create users and permissions without doing almost anything. Even objects are ready for users to log in and validate that the people who access the system are those allowed by us. In this video, we've seen the benefits of the GeneXus Access Manager to easily offer a complete security solution for our application. There's plenty of additional information about this topic. To learn more, visit the link displayed on the screen.